My wife friend-zoned me in our marriage and wants a platonic companionship, and I don't know what to do. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years and together for 20. We have 2 kids, aged 12 and 14, whom we absolutely adore, and we work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a lot of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll this can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little action in the bedroom, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much and essentially became roommates, co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It got to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individual therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped somewhat. Little by little, we started to get along and have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she was no longer in love with me and that she only saw me as a best friend. She said she only loved me in a very platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy, let alone wanting to smash with me. This was very shocking to me and, quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I was completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart conversation, asking questions about where the root of this problem lies. Her answer was, "I don't know, and that I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from." As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, frustrated, and do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no bedroom drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do or what it is about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always, "I don't know." She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. She has been feeling disconnected for years and says that our marriage just takes too much work. Her focus is only on the children for now, and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss and am mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like, at this point, I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means by companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. Regarding intimacy and smashing, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which I believe is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to smash or be intimate by drinking or anything else is good, and I declined to be a part of that. To my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc., though we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else, and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, everything was clean. We've always been very straightforward, even with the hard topics, so I don't sense any foul play or infidelity. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young, healthy individuals and good-looking. We both have good careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. Op in the comments. We did some swinging in the past, which was fun for a while. We mutually decided to stop, and we have established that it's not the issue. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we disclosed with our couples therapist to ensure we weren't neglecting a potential issue. I asked my wife if her experiences during swinging were affecting her view of our relationship, and she said they weren't. Our swinging experience was always together and very under the sheets fun-driven, nothing really emotional or poly. The truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very straightforward and never afraid of dealing with things head-on, no matter how painful. Update 1. I wanted to give you an update on how the therapy session with my wife went this week. I'm not sure if this is helpful, but I took many of the responses, comments, and suggestions from my initial post and put together some points I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues affecting our situation. One of the main things that has come up is the term resentment. It has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or why this is affecting her emotionally and mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up together and having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising kids. The therapist followed up with tons of questions, directed mostly at my wife, about her feelings towards this, and 90% of her responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying, yes, it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame, as it might imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually. This was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we missed out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again, busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life, especially when you have similar peers who can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator, aka the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes two to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships, both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that if my wife said the same thing about being a co-parent or roommate, then I would take the 180 approach and essentially focus on myself. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate with me as of now and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which, for the 50th time, she said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much non-existent when we tried this. We both really have no issue with this. We know it happened, we tried it, and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really, we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can, and that this issue has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct in saying that I will not accept this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions, and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimate relationship with smashing. I expressed how I am not going to be a convenience and that there is more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage as long as she is as well, and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues, divorce will be the only outcome. Of course, tears were involved, and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still, nothing was said, and I walked out feeling very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short, cold, and transactional. The saddest part is realizing that this dynamic is already very cold and transactional. Here is where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor our roommate/co-parent dynamic without reproach, and it should be no mistake that I am not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and basically focused on myself, very short and transactional. She asked for help with some of her personal things, to which I declined, and it really shocked her. She was upset, saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day, and we only spoke when necessary. A few days I kept this going, and she was very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night, she was crying, telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened, then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie, it has been very hard to be cold and distant because, as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and cherish her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone, so I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180, and let's just say there have been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50, and she lost her crap. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, "Hey, friends go in 50-50 and as your friend, I expect nothing less." This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyway and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realizations that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often, and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve, this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set, and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this unbiased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a smashless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words and recommendations and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic, and I wish you all the best.